Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're going to explore one of the absolute most mind-blowing concepts humanity has literally ever come up with. We usually picture time as this perfectly straight line, right? Like a ruler stretching from the past straight on into the future. But what if it's not? What if our entire universe is actually an eternal loop, a massive cosmic cycle that just repeats forever, zooming all the way from the giant scales of outer space right down into how your own brain works? Get ready to stretch your imagination, because we're taking a trip through ancient wisdom, cutting-edge astrophysics, and the psychology of how you experience every single day.
Okay, let's dive into this. What if the end of the universe is actually a beginning? It's a profound question, honestly, kind of like a mystery from an epic bedtime story. Whenever we look up at the night sky, we naturally wonder, how did this all start? And how is it all going to end? But what if the whole idea of an end is just a total illusion? Think of it like finishing a massive video game, only to unlock New Game Plus, where the whole cycle just restarts, but you keep your progress. To really wrap our heads around this, we're going to see how totally different cultures, brilliant scientists, and deep philosophers have all arrived at the exact same, mind-bending conclusion, that an end is pretty much always just a new beginning in disguise.
So, thousands of years ago, these ancient sages in India looked around at the patterns of nature, the changing of the seasons, the rising and setting of the sun, and they realized something huge. They thought, well, the whole cosmos must work the exact same way. They described the universe not as a boring straight line, but as a giant spinning wheel. They used these beautiful ancient Sanskrit words for the different phases. There's Srishti, which is the blooming or creation phase. Then Sthiti, the period of actually preserving and experiencing all that creation. And finally, Laya, the gentle dissolution of it all. If those words sound a bit intimidating, don't even worry about it. It's literally just like planting a tiny seed, watching the tree grow, and then watching its leaves fall off to nourish the soil for the next spring. Just a natural cycle.
Which brings us to this really beautiful concept called pralaya. Now, when we hear words like dissolution or end of the world, I know, it usually sounds like some super scary sci-fi apocalypse, right? But pralaya is actually the exact opposite of that. You got to think of it less like a massive explosion and way more like a gentle, restorative cosmic sleep. It's basically the universe just taking a really long, deep breath out. It is this necessary, peaceful interlude that completely clears the stage so the cosmos can wake up totally refreshed and kick off a brand new cycle of creation. Now, for a really long time, these gorgeous ideas were considered just, philosophy or ancient mysticism. But right here is where our story takes a super fascinating turn. If we fast forward to the modern era, astrophysicists who are peering through giant telescopes and mathematicians studying intense quantum mechanics, well, they're finding themselves staring right back at this ancient wheel of time. It turns out that the absolute most advanced science of the 21st century is actually beginning to echo the oldest teachings of humanity. How cool is that?
And this brilliantly illustrates how human knowledge totally unites across thousands of years. On one side, we have the ancient mystics with their concepts of pralaya and the Brahmachakra, which is that cosmic wheel we talked about. And then on the other side, we have modern physicists throwing out theories with wild names like conformal cyclic cosmology and the Big Bounce. They're using completely different languages, obviously. One uses ancient Sanskrit, the other relies on incredibly complex mathematical equations, but they are pointing toward the exact same cosmic truth. Our universe is basically a master of recycling.
Let's actually look a bit closer at one of these modern theories. It was proposed by a Nobel Prize-winning physicist named Sir Roger Penrose. He calls a single complete cycle of the universe an eon. So imagine our universe expanding and expanding and expanding over literally trillions of years until all the stars eventually fade out and even the giant black holes evaporate. Eventually, the universe is just filled with pure light, and because particles of light don't really experience time or distance the way you and I do, the universe essentially gets a case of cosmic amnesia. It literally forgets how big it is. Imagine zooming out on a digital map on your phone until all the borders and cities just disappear into a single tiny dot. That vast, incredibly cold emptiness perfectly rescales itself to become the ultra-hot, dense starting point of a brand new Big Bang.
Now, to help us actually visualize how time directs this massive cosmic dance, a 5th century philosopher named Bhartrhari gave us this absolutely wonderful metaphor. He said time is like the wire puller in a puppet play. So time isn't just a boring clock ticking away on the wall, it's the invisible game engine, or the puppet master, running behind the scenes to orchestrate everything. The birth of a star, the spinning of a galaxy, and eventually the fading away of that star. It's guiding the endless, repeating play of existence. Meanwhile, over in another area of modern physics, something called loop quantum cosmology, scientists have come up with a really exciting alternative to the traditional Big Bang story. Because instead of the universe exploding out of absolutely nothing, which, let's be real, is really hard to wrap your head around, they suggest something called a big bounce. Imagine the previous version of our universe contracting, getting squeezed down tighter and tighter and tighter. But instead of crashing down into a tiny speck of nothingness, quantum forces kick in and act like a giant cosmic trampoline. The universe hits the bottom, absorbs all that insane energy, and just smoothly bounces right back out into the massive expansion that we are all living in today.
So you might be wondering, is there actually any proof of this? Well, scientists are actively hunting for clues right now. They are looking deep, deep into the cosmic microwave background, which is basically the leftover heat from our Big Bang. And they are searching for what they call Hawking points, and these ghostly circular rings up in the sky. See, if a whole universe existed before ours, supermassive black holes crashing together in that older universe might have left huge energetic ripples, sort of like footprints left behind in the cosmic snow that actually survived the big transition into our current universe. It's pretty mind-blowing stuff.
Okay, let's zoom all the way back in for a second. We're moving from the vast, infinite scales of outer space right down into something way, way more personal. Because this idea of eternal recurrence isn't just about giant galaxies and supermassive black holes. It's actually about human history, and more importantly, it's about your very own mind. The exact patterns we see out there in the stars are the exact same patterns we experience down here in our everyday lives.
The ancient texts actually mapped this connection out so beautifully. They talked about the massive dissolution of the entire universe taking trillions and trillions of years. But they also talked about something called nitya pralaya, which translates to a daily mini-dissolution. Think about it. Every single night when you go to sleep, your entire conscious world just gently dissolves. You rest, you restore your energy, and then every single morning you wake up to a brand new creation, a completely fresh cycle. You don't even realize it, but you're actually practicing the rhythm of the cosmos every single time your head hits the pillow.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how a super famous 19th century philosopher named Friedrich Nietzsche used this whole concept as the ultimate test of mental strength. He called it amor fati, which means the love of fate. Imagine having to play the exact same level of a video game forever and ever. Every single joy, every huge victory, but also every super awkward middle school moment and every totally boring Tuesday. His challenge was, could you learn to love your life so incredibly much that you'd willingly and joyfully press replay for all of eternity?
The really famous psychologist Carl Jung totally loved this idea too. He used the symbol of the Ouroboros, which is that ancient classic image of a snake eating its own tail. Jung realized that growing up and figuring out who you are isn't just this straight line where you keep moving forward and never ever look back. Actually, true growth is circular. It's all about exploring the wide world, for sure, but always looping back to integrate your past experiences. You return to your roots over and over to become a more complete whole person.
So how do we actually bring all of these massive ideas, from bouncing universes and intense quantum physics to ancient mystics and deep psychology, into our everyday lives right now? Well, it tells us that change is absolutely nothing to be afraid of. A school year ending isn't a destruction, it's just clearing the stage for your next big adventure. Moving to a completely new place or finally overcoming a tough challenge is just a necessary reset. You, me, all of us, we are a part of this amazing, self-renewing cosmic engine. The great poet W.B. Yeats perfectly captured the sense of peace that comes with accepting all these cycles. He wrote, "We are blessed by everything. Everything we look upon is blessed." When you truly realize that the hard times dissolve just to make way for the good times, and that the universe itself is constantly refreshing and renewing, you can start to look at your own life with a deep, deep sense of gratitude. Every single experience you have, whether it feels good or bad in the moment, is a sacred, necessary part of your own personal loop.
So, the crucial point is, if this universe really is a giant cosmic wheel, and if Nietzsche's challenge was actually a reality, if you had to live this exact life, this exact day over and over again for all eternity, would you be happy? It's a huge, huge question. Take a second to really let the absolute magnitude of that sink in. It forces us to look right in the mirror and ask ourselves if we are truly living in a way that makes us proud.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. The whole idea of eternal recurrence isn't meant to make you feel trapped in some endless loop. It's actually meant to completely empower you. Because if time is an eternal loop, you have the incredible power to make your specific cycle a total masterpiece. What will you choose to do differently today? Knowing that every single moment is a precious part of the great cosmic dance, how will you choose to live? Thank you so much for exploring the cosmic Ouroboros with me in this explainer. Keep wondering, keep learning, and go make today count.